Hi, everyone, and welcome to the launch of the 2026 Our New York City Dance campaign. My name is Melinda Wong, and I'm the Research and Advocacy Manager at Dance.NYC. I'm joining from occupied Lenape and Canarsie land, also known as Brooklyn. I am a Chinese American person with bright red hair, and today I am wearing a black button-up, and there's a beautiful Our New York City Dance purple and orange gradient background behind me. Throughout this call, we'll be using presentation slides. The main format of the slides includes title slides with a purple to orange gradient background and large white text, and content slides that are white with pink headings and black text and points underneath. Images and other visual content on slides will be described when we arrive at those moments. Currently on screen is a gradient title slide with a photo of dancers in a joyous moment of connection. Please note that we are recording today's call, so if you have any questions or concerns about recording, feel free to direct message Brenda Guha in the chat. Live captioning and ASL interpretation are available today. Our ASL interpreters are from SignNexus, who are Kristen Roselli and Kami Malave, and they will be spotlit for you throughout today's event. Our captioner is Danielle Black Lyons from the Viscardi Center. You can use the CC button at the bottom of your Zoom screen to view captions, and we've dropped the link in the chat to access the stream text transcript. Thank you all for joining us. We're here today to launch the 2026 Our New York City Dance campaign, which is to come together as an ecosystem to build a more vibrant, sustainable, and equitable future for ourselves. We have some amazing guests presenting, and we also have time for breakout discussions on how we can build that future. After that, we'll explore the 2026 Our New York City Dance campaign and talk about how you all can get involved. So please note for the breakout rooms, if you didn't request live captioning or ASL in your registration, but would benefit from those services, you can direct message Brenda now to be assigned to the same breakout room as our access providers. We'll get the same note later. I also wanted to note that we have some friends in government joining us, including members from the New York State Council on the Arts, the New York City Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment, and the Manhattan Borough President's Office. Thank you for attending. Before we get started, though, I wanted to pass it over to our lovely Advocacy and Programs Coordinator, Nadia Harala, to take us through some community guidelines.
Hey everybody, I'm Nadia. I'm Dance.NYC's Programs and Advocacy Coordinator. As a visual description, I'm a light-skinned Arab person with short dark hair. I'm wearing an olive green shirt, and my background is the Our New York City Dance campaign, gradient, and branding. I'm joining from occupied Lenape land, also known as Manhattan, and I'm really excited to get you all connected to the actions in this campaign. But first, we're just going to go over some guidelines for the space. A general note for accessibility, please be clear, loud, and maintain a moderate pace while you're speaking, both for our captioner and for general understanding. A few housekeeping elements, please stay muted unless you're speaking. If you're speaking, please introduce yourself and your organization if you're with one. And if you're on camera, please give a short visual description just like we did for accessibility purposes. If you have a question, you can put it in the chat, raise your hand, or unmute and share. We discourage the use of any AI note takers in the Zoom room to keep the digital space secure and inclusive. I'd like to remind everyone that there's a stream text transcript link available to everyone if you need a reference after the call. And if you have individual questions or concerns, please send a direct message to Brenda on the chat. Some community guidelines for our call today. By participating in this event, you're entering a virtual space of learning and accountability based on Dance.NYC's values of justice, equity, and inclusion. This means we agree to share our opinions respectfully and course correct if harm is caused, to honor everyone's humanity, and to not tolerate speech that is disparaging, abusive, or violent. If anyone violates these guidelines, they'll either be asked to course correct or will be removed. Thank you all for your collective agreement. Additionally, Dance.NYC would like to recognize our country's history and its legacy in the space we occupy. Parts of this land acknowledgement have been adapted with the guidance of Indigenous dance artist and activist Emily Johnson, and more recently by River Whittle. Dance.NYC would like to acknowledge that the city of New York is located on stolen land, more specifically Lenapehoking, the traditional territory of the Lenape people, who are also recognized federally as the Delaware Nation of Oklahoma in Anadarko, Oklahoma, the Delaware Tribe of Indians in Bartlesville, Oklahoma, Stockbridge Munsee Band of Mohican Indians in Bowler, Wisconsin, and in Canada, the Munsee Delaware Nation in Munsee, Ontario, Delaware Nation in Moravia Town, Ontario, and the Delaware of Six Nations of the Grand River in Oswegan, Ontario. The Lenape people are the original inhabitants of this land and gave Manhattan Island its name, Mannahatta. Dance.NYC recognizes that as an organization based in NYC, we benefited and continue to benefit from the systemic displacement and erasure of the Lenape people and governance. Today, we're trying to correct those harms. You can begin by joining us in supporting Lene Lenapek's Kwayak. We're going to drop a link to their website in the chat where you can make a donation and also take a look at their work in general. With this acknowledgement, we also name openly the legacies of the African slave trade, migration and immigration patterns, the disability rights and disability justice movements, and the LGBTQ fight for justice. Please join me in taking a moment to recognize and reflect on the centuries of violence, displacement, forced migration, and settlement here, and consider what reparations you can begin to take today. Thank you all. Now I'm going to pass it to our new executive director at Dance.NYC, Raquel Dutois, and then back to Melinda to introduce what the New York City Dance Campaign is.
Hi, I am Raquel Dutois, she, they. I have dark hair that's up on a bun. I am a sassy Latina wearing a black Dance NYC shirt with a colorful beaded earrings and necklace. I am zooming in from Northern Manhattan, also known as Manhattan in Lenape, before I continue, I also want to thank the many funders and our board members who make our work, including this event, possible. This January, I joined Dance.NYC as executive director to help build a New York City dance landscape where every worker and every organization can thrive. As a long life cultural worker, performance artist, curator, and mother, I am profoundly aware of the challenges that those who choose this life in the arts and what we face. But I am also aware that what can happen when cultural workers come together and advocate not only for what is needed, but also for abundance and not scarcity. That is what our New York City Dance Campaign is about, an annual effort every spring and summer where the dance community unites in collective action to build a future where every dancer, every company, and every community has a place and a space to thrive. Melinda.
Yes. So this is the third year of the Our New York City Dance campaign. In the first year, we focused on a lot of civic education. We shared findings from our research in dance, and we asked all of you to share how we are building our New York City dance in your day-to-day practice. Last year, we focused on moving from education to action. So we worked with you all to define and fight for four key advocacy priorities, which were just funding for dance, dance worker pay and benefits, dance education, and space for dance. Together, we called our legislators, showed up at City Hall, and met to envision our future. And that made an impact. We contributed to major wins for the cultural ecosystem, like a $75 million increase in the New York City arts and culture budget, which was the largest in city history. And this was the first growth in baseline funding for over a decade. We won a $45 million increase in city arts education funding, with $41 million of it baselined, meaning it's something that will go into the budget for the future years. And we made key advances in state legislation to promote culturally diverse arts funding and to codify arts instruction for every student. This happened in part because all of you showed up. 72 of you joined the Our New York City Dance Action Crew, which is a dedicated group of dance workers committed to moving forward the campaign. Nadia and I worked with Action Crew members who gave testimony at their first City Council hearings. We worked with Action Crew members who learned about new policies that impacted the dance workers and who shared that information with their own communities. I'll pass it back to Raquel.
Well, as I continue to grow in my new role at Dance NYC, I want to work alongside you. and all of you to realize our vision, our New York dance, city dance. We will go more in depth in specific actions, and you can take this year later on in the call. But for now, if you want to build with us this spring and summer, we'll drop a link in so you can sign up for our New York City Dance Action Crew in the chat. Now, Melinda will help us situate us in the conversation and learnings of our call today.
Definitely. So, after 2 powerful years of building with dance workers across the city, we learned a lot. And if nothing else, we came here 2 years older. And it's been a 2 years. I know for myself, I can't even begin to describe how I felt, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate here, right? I felt tired. I felt overwhelmed. I felt frightened at times. I felt furious beyond words. I felt at times like so overactivated and then numb and frozen at other times, and then all of that over again. Um, but there have also been times where I felt surprisingly hopeful and empowered, where I felt creative, where I felt like moving and like dancing, where I felt like being together with community members. And I felt that way because I've seen more of our neighbors come together to build a better New York, right? So we kept asking ourselves here at Dance NYC, what does it mean to be doing this work, to be fighting for a more resourced and equitable dance community in the year 2026? We've watched regressive political forces grow in power that seek to threaten marginalized communities and seek to silence artistic dissent. We know that these attacks aren't new, right? They've been woven into our nation's history. But what we face today also carries a character all its own. And still, amidst all this, we are in a unique political moment of opportunity at the local level that felt distant to me at even, a year ago. Everyone on this call knows how hard it is to make a living in this city as a cultural worker. And finally, this year, I've heard more people in government and in civic spaces talk about affordability for arts workers than ever before. So, we wanted to invite 3 speakers who could help us understand what it takes to meet this moment by exploring connections to the past, to the present, and to the future of dance. We asked our speakers this question: how can we advocate for NYC dance in this moment? What is old and what is new about the problems we're facing and the solutions we can build? After the speakers go, we will have the chance to discuss the same question in breakout rooms. I'm noting again that if you would like to be in the same breakout room as our live captioning and ASL access providers, please direct message Brenda in the chat now. So we are moving to a screen right now with the names and headshots of each of our guest speakers. First, we will have devynnemory, a choreographer, dance artist, body worker, and healthcare worker, joining us from the middle of their nursing shift. Then we will have Jawole Willajo Zoller, a pioneering choreographer, teacher, and the founder of Urban Bushwomen. Finally, we will have Gonzalo Casals, the co-director of the Culture and Arts Policy Institute. Their full bios are available on the launch event page. All right, without further ado, I will pass it on to Devyn to share a little bit.
Thank you. Shiki Hetch, Nutella devynnemory. I am a light-skinned, mixed-race Indigenous person calling from my homelands of Lenape-Hoking, from my shift as a registered nurse. I am Lenape and Nantiquoc, and I am very happy to be here with you all. Thanks for the warm introduction. So this question, what does it mean to advocate for New York City dance at this moment? I'm going to read some of my writing and improvise as I go because I want to make sure I focus on these key points. So I view dance as a very liberatory practice of sustaining aliveness and survivance. This word survivance is a word that comes out of Indigenous community, that is an active practice of presence with oneself, others, and the natural world. So it is the continuance of Native stories in daily life, versus how often we are responding and reacting to the current dominance, and the tragedy of what is perceived as Indigenous victory. So to advocate for dancing bodies, inherently is the practice of presence and aliveness. So it is important, I think, as a dance advocate to find one's own role in the ecosystem of supporting choreographers and dancers. So to find your role, that's sustaining non-dominant cultures, non-dominant views, and that reflects an honest view of the world around us currently, that decolonizes the process of supporting the maker. I have a few points that make me feel like this is possible. So, one, centering less administrative work for the artist around the creation of that work. Two, offering more financial support for the artist without a profitable product. Three, support that funds rest with fees for healthcare appointments, fees for retirement, fees for housing, so that we can continue and sustain the labor of being a cultural worker. Um, and this question is so beautiful. What is old and what is new about the problems we are facing and the solutions that we can build? So, I'm about to hit my 10-year mark as a registered nurse, and I went into nursing to support my work as a choreographer and a dancer here in Lenape-Hoking. So I've actively worked through COVID and many other public health crises to care for our public. And I, I took on this role because I needed the financial support to continue being a choreographer and a maker. And I'm on shift right now because of my hours are 13 hours, 3 or 4 times a week. And I'm constantly focusing on my eating and my sleeping, my spiritual care. And I don't have the time to apply for all of the grants to support my work, let alone all of the marketing, all of the, updating my website, learning how to put on a tour. Like that is the administrative labor, I feel like could be really woven into some of the funding for supporting to make the work. And I don't have the time right now because I don't have the privilege of sustaining myself as an artist, so I take on these other roles. And I took that on 10 years ago, and it has helped my work. However, I'm quite overextended, and sometimes I wonder if that was woven into the work of dance makers, if I would, those of us who don't have the privilege of having that funding, perhaps from family systems, could sustain ourselves a little bit more. Um, so as an active RN, I have health insurance. I have a retirement fund with a hospital that matches what I put in. I never thought I'd have that. I'm able to go to therapy. I get my eyes and my teeth checked. I can pay for acupuncture and therapy with this insurance. And due to the impact of cultural rupture in my family system, due to being an Indigenous person with a broken bloodline, which is very common, I left home at a very early age. And so I am my own source of my support into my future. So being a dancer, it sustains my energy as I move into my grief of this path, but it's also a detriment financially to be a dancer. So I care a lot about paying my collaborators very well. And so if I do have the time to apply for a grant and I don't get it, I know that my source of income, no matter what, can sustain myself and sustain my collaborators. Um, and I'm in quite a bit of debt also for taking on these degrees. Um, and a lot of us who come from these kinds of backgrounds that I'm mentioning, sustain a lot of trauma, and so we move towards movement, right? To move it through um, our blood, move it through our tissue. And as I care for other people in the hospital setting who have a lot of trauma as well, I question how to get support to sustain myself so I can continue the work of sustaining others. So lately, I am way behind on my tasks, my emails, even an event that's like this, that's so beautiful, and for with people who they are very supportive and taking each next step to do a speaking arrangement like this. Again, I'm on my lunch break, so we're kind of moving towards the crevices of how to do all this administrative work just to show up to each other. Um, and as cultural workers, I do think that support needs to continue. So lastly, being an artist and a cultural worker who creates space for community to reflect and grieve about life, we all deserve healthcare. not just to stay healthy as we can, as our land, air, and water become more contaminated, but because it is our bodies that are we are putting on the line as dancers and choreographers. This is our instrument for income. So, how can we show choreographers that we care about their bodies? We need each other to sustain lives. We need administrative support so we can continue sharing what we do, and we need financial support to care for our vessels one day at a time. Thank you for hearing me. So grateful to be with you all.
Thank you, Devyn. Hello, everyone. Um, I'm excited to be here. I am a African American woman, brown skin. I have my hair on a top notch, but I've got a nice big patch of gray at the very top of my forehead. I've got big I think they're purplish glasses that I have on and kind of matching lipstick that's a little purplish. I have on a black top. I have on earrings that are asymmetrical and fun. And behind me, I have a tapestry of a very colorful depiction of a festival in Nigeria. I am so excited to be here and to offer whatever perspective I can. Thank you all for this invitation. I um I come to speaking about this as someone who is 75 years old, who's had a company for 41 years. So I'm bringing a perspective of seeing lots of cycles, um, experience history, and at the same time learning, constantly learning and understanding where we are now. Um, I come to this also as a person who is running a company and has lived as a dancer, moved to New York with very little money at a time in 1980, at a very different time in our dance life. So I'm really trying to understand all of this in relationship to what is the same, what is changed, and what is possible. I approach this time, this work, as I think I have through a lot of my life, with a lot of hope and a lot of joy, despite all of the things that are um, coming at us. I come from a family that many people would characterize as very traumatized through just life as an African American person growing up in what people often call the inner city. And I think out of that, I've chosen to really see forward movement and progress, even though on days I don't necessarily feel that, but I've chosen to live in that place. Um, so what do I think is the same? Dance is still undervalued. It's still underpaid, both from the dancers and the companies. And I think what is maybe different about that is that there's a different expectation, as I think there should be. I think it's a good thing of what the dancers, dance workers would really want to be paid and what kinds of things they need to live in this current economy. And I think that's a good thing. What I'm trying to understand and to do is to balance as someone who has a company. Many of us who have companies have seen our fees flatline or go less. And so as we're working to meet demands, we are not getting more money as companies for touring or for local work. And so then it seems that the companies that are able to manage that more successfully have a lot of access to wealth. And a lot of companies don't have that access to wealth. And so we do have this unequal system that has been there for a long time. And what I have been working with, something with the dancers of Urban Bushwomen, is budgeting and really making that connection between their budget and, projected actual variance and what is organizational. So we can't manifest money out the sky, just as the dancers are looking at their budget and like, well, if I just said suddenly you got to pay $1,000 more for something, it doesn't manifest out of the sky. So how do we work together if we understand these systems and we understand the inequity? How do we work together to get to something that is equitable? And sometimes I feel like we get caught up in a us and them relationship, which I think is not helpful at all, and just I think makes us maybe uh, stuck in certain patterns. The other thing that I struggle and I grapple with is what I really look at the conditions of poor and working class people. And I see work, I just see workers, period. So affordability is not just artists, it is many, many people. And so how do we as dancers and choreographers and makers not separate ourselves from we don't put ourselves in any kind of special elite status, that we are, this is what we do as many people, the people who might clean houses or move cars or all those things, that we are in a system that does not value labor, and we're in a system that does not value creative making. So how do we then really understand that system together and work together with that system? I I'm looking at my notes here. So what how do we align our expectations together? What is it that we can do that will allow us to really focus on better conditions for all of us? I was at a meeting years and years ago when I think they were talking about rebuilding the whole downtown area, and they had architects showing all of these ideas, and I raised my hand from the back and I said, "So where are poor and working class people going to live in this vision that you have?" And I think that is still the same question. How do we put pressure, which now for people are talking about affordability in larger ways from our government. How do we put pressure there so that we can thrive? We know that artists are going to continue to make work regardless. We are that is our personal commitment. How are we able to then really be able to not just do it because we have to do it, but how are we able to benefit our community, our families, our own selves through healthcare, through our work? So for me, that path took me to also teaching at the university, where there are right now I teach in Florida, so I teach in Florida. Um, where there are, healthcare systems in terms of your employment and a regular paycheck for at least for 9 months out of the year. So that does provide a certain kind of stability for me, not necessarily for the company, but it has provided a stability for me. What are other kinds of ways that we can look at stability and systems to bring ourselves together? I do think one of the things that has changed is, maybe if I can think about, and this may or may not be true, but this is my perception. When I think about Reconstruction period, that is when all of the government systems were conspiring against African people and newly freed Africans. All of the systems were conspiring against that. I don't know that I've seen it so overtly in my lifetime. I read about Reconstruction. I lived through the 60s and experienced that, but this is different. And I think it requires a different kind of organizing and a different kind of way that we come together to look at how to face these challenges. Censorship has always been there for many, many people of color. What we can say and can't say has been censored for centuries. How can we begin to understand that it's not something new that is happening, but it's something that is very old and very organized and that has infiltrated every aspect of our government that is happening. So as we as artists, we as people who are standing up, who are speaking out, we understand how we can do this together, and so we're stronger together. I don't know what the solutions are other than to keep talking and keep talking across generations and understanding that we have different experiences and different expectations. Certainly, when I came into dance, I had no thought about being able to make a living. I came because I wanted to be a dancer. I wanted to move to New York and be a dancer. The times are different. It was maybe, I was paying $200 a month rent in the Bronx. Times are different. So I can't just live in that place and say, well, you should just want to be an artist. I don't have the solutions, but what I do know is that we coming together, like this forum here, to talk together, to learn together, and to act together is going to be essential. Thank you.
Buenas tardes, Gonzalo Casals. Talking to you from Jackson Heights, Queens. It's an honor to be here with all of you today, and I look forward to talking more about all these issues when we get together in the breakout groups. I'm what people would call white passing Latino, middle-aged. I am wearing a blue polo shirt. I have my signature, salt and pepper beer, thick black rim reading glasses, and I'm sitting in my living room with some artwork in the back. Um, I want to tell you a little bit about the reality, but I also I want to piggyback on a lot of the points that both Devynn and Jaloi made before. I would never forget Jaloi talking to my students at my class on cultural policy, saying, "Don't get upset, get organized." Right? And if there's anything that we can take today with us, is that let's not get upset, let's get organized. Again, Devynn and Jaoli describe a lot the reality today at a higher level in a systemic way, which is how the Institute focuses on advocacy. We're seeing wealth concentrating more and more in the hands of a few, either corporations or individuals. And as that happens, worker benefits and protections continue to erode. So we put together like 5 points, right, to help keep us focused and organized, in the advocacy work that we have ahead of us. And all this keeping in mind that dancers are free most of the time and freelance workers, right, make up for much of our field and have always been hit hardest, when financial crises happen. Number one, we want to focus on income stability and worker protections, right? As Devynn was speaking, I was thinking, what would it take for, the stability and the care and the protections that they're getting through their work at the hospital, just for being an artist, just for being a dancer, right? So living wages, basic protections, and portable benefits for those that are stitching as freelancers, right? Stitching their income through different employers and different projects. Number two, affordability, right? And again, this is something Joeli said, it's not hitting only artists, it's hitting working class, and I would say also lately middle class. How do we make sure that we secure permanent, affordable spaces to work and live? Without that, those very basic needs, there's very little that we can do to contribute in society with a beautiful gift that you all give us, which is the work of art that you create every day. Number three, discipline equity, right? In addition to racial and ethnic equity in everything that we do, some disciplines, are treated as less than others. Dance, if we were to remove sort of Eurocentric, traditional, like ballet, right, out of the equation, funding for dance, it's very small compared to other disciplines, right? How do we make sure that we recognize funding, for disciplines like dance at the city level? In addition to that, and in thinking of equity, right? And again, the two speakers mentioned that unlike the visual arts that I can send once I make my film, I can just go to places and be screened or the artwork can be shown, right? Dancers put their body every time that they perform, right? And how do we make sure we recognize that effort over and over again? Number four, advocacy infrastructure, right? We need all of us to get organized and be out there to make noise and create the change that we need to do. Organizations like, Dance.NYC or what we call art service organizations need support in order to organize the field. We need to make sure that infrastructure is there to support all of us. And lately, this is something very close to our interest at the Institute, evidence-based policy. Share data, build transparent systems to guide funding and measure impact, right? If we cannot count, if we cannot point out at the impact, it would be very hard to get people to listen to us and how important the work that we do is. The good news is that, these priorities are not new. They have been at the core of organizations like Dance.NYC for at least over a decade, and now are central across the sector. I see more and more all of us across disciplines, across roles in the ecosystem. I see more and more all of us speaking the same language. And more importantly, I say the policy of the local government, right? The city administration is taking shape. We're seeing that they're starting to speak the same language, right? There's a growing focus on economic justice and workers' rights. So I am very optimistic that the conditions for structural change are emerging. So I want to encourage all of you not to give up. To again, as Jaoli said years ago to my students, don't get upset, get organized. Thank you so much for having me today.
All right. Thank you all so much to our brilliant guests for sharing. I don't know about you all, but I feel so moved and centered and grounded. I loved hearing from Devyn about how dance work can both sustain us and take from us in many ways. And what do we need to sustain us into the future so we can keep on surviving and resisting? From Jawale about how the systems we're facing are old and organized. And Gonzalo talking to us about how can we organize back, right? Like knowing what we're facing, knowing that this is hundreds of years of systemic oppression that have led to our current moment. What can we do and how can we organize with amongst each other, amongst as working class people, as working people to fight back? So we really hope that these stories can help situate us to what's possible in this current moment. So to that end, we wanted to give you the opportunity to answer the same question as our guests in small groups. And that question is, how can we advocate for a New York City dance in this moment? What is old and what is new about the problems we're facing and the solutions we can build? And we'll also put that question in the chat for you all. So you can feel free in your breakout rooms to either respond to the speaker's remarks or take it in a completely different direction. You can start by talking about the problems we face, but our hope is that we want to be able to have people also talk about the solutions, talk about how we get organized too. So the goal is kind of for each group to brainstorm, 3 actions we can take under this condition. And that can be small, that can be big, that can be a change in language, it can be joining an organization, it can be everyday things or larger things. So we will be opening the breakout rooms in a minute for about 12 minutes. We encourage you to introduce yourselves and share your answers to the questions. In each room, we would ask you to assign a note taker because we'll be giving people the opportunity to share out once they come back. And we'll also drop a link to a document in the chat where you can drop your notes. If you requested live captioning or ASL in your registration or messaged Brenda during this call to request it, then you will be assigned to breakout room 1, where access providers will be. If you would like to be in breakout room 1 for the access providers and haven't already requested it, you can message Brenda now. And if you're in the wrong breakout room or if you want to switch breakout rooms, you can come back to the main room and we'll reassign you. Okay, are there any questions before we open the breakout rooms? Okay, Brenda, do we have them ready? All right, the breakout rooms are gonna open. We will see you in a few minutes. Okay, I've just gotten the note that there's some people who are still returning, so I'm going to repeat that one more time for people, and also because it took a second to get the ASL spot lit. But thank you everyone for your participation. We're going to have a few minutes here for people to report out from their breakout rooms. If you have anything to share you'd like to report out, feel free to come off mute or share it on the chat.
I will jump in. I think a running through line for our conversation in our breakout room is the recognition of collective action and not operating in silos, but coming together and working across generations, as well as across disciplines. So recognizing the need for uplifting dance as a discipline, speaking back to that discipline equity, but also working within with other arts organizations outside of dance in order to, you know, uh, rising tides lift all boats and having a larger group when it comes to creating structural change, systemic change. And one of the members of our group said something that really resonated with me personally. It was like, there's never been an option to change the world. There's never not been an option to change the world in order to have a place in it. So that just really resonated with me in terms of like the need to, uh, it's doing this work on top of our day jobs, yes, but like it's doing this work in order for us to have a place in it.
Wow, love that, Hastings. Never been an option not to do this work. Definitely hear you in terms of like working across silos. I feel like Jawole spoke a lot to that about how it's about workers in general, and it's a lot of us in dance who are also workers in other fields as well. Other comments, thoughts from breakout rooms?
Well, I'll just jump in quickly. I am taking notes, but I wanted to say something that impacted us was how do we incorporate rest and days off and restorative practices within our budgets? So how do we do that when we are actually applying to grants, and how do we include that? And so as a form of, claiming that rest as a form of restoration. So that one came in with a collaboration from our interim ED, Sarah, that was with us at Dance.NYC. So I want to give prompts to her.
Love that. So for people in this room who are leaders of organizations, how are we fundraising for rest? How are we fundraising to support workers and staff? Other thoughts? Maybe if we can get someone from breakout rooms 1 through 4. If you were in 1 through 4, would you like to come off mute and share what we talked about?
Yeah, I can jump in really quickly for group three. We talked a lot about, sort of what it means to just be an artist in general. So affordable housing, healthcare, just the baseline things that make you able to live your life outside of the studio and the civic advocacy for those really important kind of foundational support structures are huge. And what does it mean to build coalitions and have there be a cross section of these ideas that are either in live workspace or some different way of thinking about how to attack the general challenges of living in New York.
All right. Thank you, Donald. Absolutely. Like the basic needs are essential. I think we have time for one more comment. Maybe we can have the second half of breakout rooms 5 through 8. Would anyone like to be your last comment for today?
I can jump in. We are from, I believe, group 8 or whatever number. Um, but yeah, we talked a lot about community and care and how do we build community, like what does care look like in rehearsal spaces and what does care actually look like when it comes to like within the community and in giving each other. I don't want to paraphrase anyone's um, thoughts and ideas. So, but something that I shared is that like on top of like community building and what care looks like in the space, I was also saying that like because like where events and when events and performances happen, that's where the people gather. And in at places where people gather, that is a perfect opportunity to share like action items, petitions, ICE hotline numbers, like call your senators, like there's this Dance.NYC field wide call happening, like that kind of stuff can be inserted in programs. And I think that would be I feel like taking opportunities of those like where people gather, those places to spread information. I feel like that to me, like I feel like that could be a form of care, that could be a form of community building, and also advocacy for the Dance NYC world and beyond. And someone from our group also shared that like there is New York Public Library offers a lot of like services, like career services and tax assistance and stuff like that. So check it out. I think like they commented in the group chat.
Totally. Thank you,
Group,
Manatsu. Um,
group 7 jumping in. Primarily, we're talking about how to communicate our products. Oh, did you assign already? Sorry. Um, and also intergenerational relationship. How you know how the Gen Z and Millennia and Alpha can be involved in the process because of the knowledge of AI and IT that would help. And I'm sorry I jumped in.
Poetry, we're always so grateful when you jump in. We love you. Thank you all for sharing a little bit from your breakout rooms. If you didn't get the chance to share and there's things you wanted to share, feel free to drop them in the chat. That'll keep on running. And I'm excited to like take a look at these notes and kind of eavesdrop into some of your minds. Um,
Um, do you mind if I just jump in to say something before we go? Because is that okay, Melinda?
sure, Ella, go ahead.
Raquel? Sorry. I just wanted to say that I'm so glad to see everyone. This is a note of such encouragement during such a difficult time. And I also wanted to welcome Raquel. I've come to know Raquel a little bit over the last little while in various ways. And I know so many of you have laid the groundwork for her to be successful. And I just want to lend a little note of support. She's experienced and so geared up and ready for action. And I've interacted with some of you over the years and maybe over recent days. And I want to send encouragement and my respect. And it's just so great to be within community. Sorry for interrupting. Time is precious, but community is even more so, right? So hang in, everyone. It's going to be a bumpy ride. Thank you.
Thank you, Ella. I definitely hear you there. Hang in, it's going to be a bumpy ride. All right. So I really wanted us to have the time to talk because I think like part of what it means to be advocating for dance right now, to be building our New York City dance is being like adaptable. It's about being creative. It's about being nimble. And that requires connection. And like Ella and Manatsu kind of emphasize, it requires community. So thank you all for your presence here. So I wanted to take that energy and talk a little bit about how you can get involved. Really, the spirit of our New York City Dance campaign is that we want to make it easy for all of you who are juggling a million things to get your feet wet when it comes to advocacy for our field. So the Our New York City Dance campaign happens on two levels. The first is that we take action to fight for the dance ecosystem on the broader policy landscape. So you'll see shortly we'll have a little website tour where you can see kind of what some of those actions are, but we identified some policies that currently have some momentum that allow us to advocate for artists. And then we look within the industry, making moves to reshape how we make and support dance in our day-to-day practice, right? So that included some of kind of the tips that Raquel was sharing about, like how do we build into our budgets rest, all of these things to make our day-to-day practice better. So we've created a campaign landing page to kind of act as a hub for these policy actions and these daily moves. It's meant to be a resource for you all as we continue on this work this spring and summer. So I will pass it on to Nadia to do a little tour for us. You can feel free to follow along if that's helpful for you. Nadia's finding the unmute button. There's many screens going on right now.
Apologies, everything moved around really quickly, and I'll keep my headphones nicely plugged into my head so that everyone can hear me this time. So I'm right now on our New York City Dance website. As a quick visual description of the website overall, at the top we have a banner that says Our New York City Dance, and there's a photo of a really fun on-stage dance circle. The rest of the website looks mostly like black text on white background, with some callouts that either have our purple to pink brand gradient or solid peach or purple boxes. So I'm going to go down and take a look at our action items that are around our 4 main advocacy priorities. The first one is just funding for the dance ecosystem. As many people have said today, there's not enough money. That's nothing new. And we'll be pushing for public funding for the arts, which is kind of a evergreen issue for us. But this year, it's a little bit different. As Melinda mentioned, we got baseline city arts funding in last year's budget cycle. However, the issue this year is that both the city and the state have less money overall, so it's possible that we'll see some last-minute cuts. So we need to keep advocating around this issue. The second one is fair pay and protection for dance workers. Again, many people have said it today. Dance workers don't make enough. Our recent research suggests that the average dance worker makes 15% less than the living wage for New York City, and that's just not okay. But this year we're seeing more political energy around things like portable benefits, healthcare, and affordability. So right now the action in here includes things like statewide universal healthcare, and we're hoping to build out this category with some more actions as the campaign goes on. The next one is dance education for all. We want all students in New York City to have the opportunity to take dance classes. What's new this year is that we have the opportunity not just to advocate for students, but also for their teachers to get paid enough, because we know that students need educators that are supported and rested and able to take care of their basic needs and dedicate enough time to their work. So it's going to include some actions around dance teaching artist pay as well. Finally, we have affordable living and working space for dance. Last year's campaign included some action items around arts creation and rehearsal space. This year we're expanding it to include housing for artists, because artists don't just need to make work, we need to live somewhere, just like anybody else. So it's going to include some actions around affordable artist housing as well as affordable rehearsal space. I'm going to click into our Take Action page, where you can see an example of how this works. So for instance, under just funding for the dance ecosystem, there are specific actions you can click out and take around city, state, and federal funding. I'll also just really quick show our other aspect of the campaign. Apologies, let me go back here. I'm stuck. Here we are. There we go. Okay, here we are. If you go back to our main page, you'll also see our 3 moves pages because our campaign isn't just about changing the policy landscape, it's also changing our internal practices within the industry. How can we change the ways we relate to each other day to day to also make New York City dance better? So based on our research, we divided those moves into 3 categories: dance workers' lack of value and protection in society, financial unsustainability for our workers and organization, and that justice, equity, and inclusion are still lagging. So if you click into these sheets, you'll see first some research and facts around the issue, and then you'll see some moves that you can make on a systemic level in community and day to day to support that issue. And they each include resources that you can click on. For instance, if you're interested in contracting more BIPOC, immigrant, and disabled artists, we've included some databases where you can learn about more people to work with.
Amazing. Oh. Amazing. Thank you, Nadia. We are now back in the slides, which includes an image of people, including me, holding an Our New York City Dance campaign sign at an arts education rally. So one way you can get involved today is by signing up to be a part of the Our New York City Dance Action Crew. So this is meant to be a dedicated group of people committed to actively shaping the future of dance in New York City. So as a crew member, you'll receive, things like exclusive advocacy updates, along with direct calls to action like attending rallies, contacting lawmakers, support with testifying at city council hearings, stuff like that. So, this is really meant to be about more than just staying informed. It's, about showing up. It's about taking action. It's about moving together as a community. So, we will drop the link for the action crew in the chat. All right, we have just a couple more minutes left in our call. As we come to a close, I wanted to give us some time to use this momentum to get started. So we are going to play some music for a couple of minutes, and I'm going to ask everyone in this call to do 2 things while we play the music. Earlier was flamenco. We'll see what it is this time. DJ Brinda's got us. First is that if you would like to get involved, you should sign up for the Our New York City Dance Action Crew. And the second is I want everyone to drop one thing in the chat that you are committing to doing to build a better dance ecosystem this spring and summer. So it could be anything, any of the things, hopefully we had some time to talk about this in groups. Just one thing that you are committing on doing. So that way we can all see that and feel like we're not alone in this. So we'll have a couple of minutes to play that. And then when the time ends, I'll bring us back together for a quick poll. All right, hit that music, Brenda. All right, thank you all for your participation. We are at the end of our time together today, but I'm really looking forward to working with you all over the next few months to achieve a vision of dance where we can all thrive. The last thing we'll have you do is to fill out a quick poll about your experience today. It's going to be completely anonymous. Once you're done with the poll, you can go ahead and leave, but please stay tuned for more campaign updates. We'll be sending a follow-up to everyone here with more resources about how you can get involved. And if you have any questions about today, you can contact me. I'll drop my email in the chat. So we'll launch the poll, and then we'll say goodbye to you all after you fill it out. Thank you all.